Cedar Point is known as the best amusement park in the United States. The park has one of the highest attendance in the country from any non-theme amusement parks, drawing close to 4 million guests a year. But Cedar Point is in huge trouble. There's another park nearby that has been growing more and more rapidly and is on track to destroy Cedar Point by taking its title for the #1 amusement park in the country. That park is Hershey Park. Yes, I know this sounds crazy that Hershey Park, a park who only broke the 200-foot mark on a coaster 10 years ago, could somehow beat Cedar Point, but I have data backing up my theory and I was shocked when I saw this. Hershey Park has a total of 14 roller coasters while Cedar Point has a total of 16. Most of both these parks' coasters lineups are pretty even, but Cedar Point has a clear lead with them having more and overall better coasters than Hershey Park. So how in the world would Hershey Park even come close to destroying Cedar Point and taking the number spot anytime soon? What most people don't realize about Hershey Park is that they aren't run by a chain. Every dollar the park has to spend is spent in this park. Cedar Point, on the other hand, is owned by Cedar Fair. And if Cedar Point makes money, Cedar Fair may decide to invest some of it into building up some of their smaller parks. Though Cedar Fair is the favorite child in the Cedar Fair chain, there are still other parks Cedar Fair needs to manage. Hershey Park is the favorite child and the only child since it's the only park owned by Hershey. That means Hershey Park gets all the attention, and when the park sees an increase in profit from a new addition, they are even more likely to add another huge addition soon after. Since 2000, Hershey Park has opened 7 new coasters while Cedar Point opened 6. Hershey Park before 2000 was nothing compared to they are now. In the last 20 years, they've added 3 Intamins with Storm Runner, Fahrenheit, and Skyrush, a B&M Hyper with Candymonium, and a family coaster with Laugh Track, and oh yeah, their kiddie coaster Coco Cruiser. Cedar Point before 2000 was also nothing compared to now. 20 years ago, there was no Top Thrill Dragster, no Maverick, no Gatekeeper, no Valve Raven, no Steel Vengeance. Comparing Hershey Park's additions since the year 2000 to Cedar Point's, you can see it's pretty even. Both open an Intamin Accelerator, Top Thrill Dragster at Cedar Point and Storm Runner at Hershey, though Top Thrill is much taller. Storm Runner offers a few more elements and doesn't just end after the top hat. The 2 parks also both open hypercoasters, one from RMC with Steel Vengeance and the other from B&M with Candymonium. Both parks open a sort of dive coaster, Cedar Point with Valraven and Hershey Park with Fahrenheit. Both parks open a top 25 worthy Intamin coaster, one with Maverick and the other with Skyrush. That leaves Gatekeeper and Laugh Track. So although Cedar Point's additions may have been just a bit better, the 2 parks have been really close in terms of new investment. However, that wouldn't indicate Hershey Park becoming better than Cedar Point. For that, they need to add better and more frequent investments. Hershey Park's future, in my opinion, is brighter than ever, and I think they will be opening a massive new RMC hypercoaster followed by a massive B&M dive in the next 4 years after retheming both Sidewinder and Wildcat for 2022 and 2023. I made an entire video on why I think this makes sense for Hershey Park, but now I'm going to share with you why Hershey Park is about to destroy Cedar Point, and for that we need to look at attendance numbers. In 2019, Cedar Point was visited by just over 3.7 million guests, while Hershey Park was visited by almost 3.4 million guests. Cedar Point's attendance was higher than Hershey Park's consistently every year, but that all changed in 2020. Parks in 2020 weren't able to open on time for the season, and both Hershey Park and Cedar Point only opened their gates in early July. Hershey Park did open a week earlier on July 3rd, while Cedar Point opened on July 9th. In 2020, Hershey Park was visited by 1.7 million guests, a little more than half Hershey Park's previous year's attendance, while Cedar Point was visited by slightly over 1 million guests, less than a third of their previous year's attendance. Why? Why did Hershey Park suddenly get more guests than Cedar Point in 2020? Not only did Hershey Park get more visitors than Cedar Point, but it seems Hershey Park was the most visited amusement park in the United States in 2020, even getting more visitors than SeaWorld Orlando. The reason Hershey Park saw so many guests in 2020 compared to other parks was because of, you guessed it, Candymonium. Hershey Park opened a brand new B&M Hypercoaster for 2020. But if you think Candymonium was the only cause for the massive crowds visiting this park in 2020, let's compare Hershey Park's 2020 attendance numbers with Kings Island. Kings Island opened a brand new B&M Giga Coaster for 2020, so if Hershey Park and Kings Island both opened around the same time, with Kings Island opening only about a week later, and with the fact that Kings Island normally gets more visitors than Hershey Park in an average year, you'd think Kings Island B&M Giga would get them more visitors than Hershey Park in 2020. But that's not what happened. Kings Island only brought in a little over 1.6 million guests, a full 100,000 less than Hershey Park's 2020 attendance. In my opinion, these attendance numbers show is two things. One, Hershey Park is more popular than ever with the new addition of Candymonium, and two, Hershey Park's $100+ million investment for 2020 was well worth it. While 2021 attendance numbers aren't out yet, I think it's safe to assume Hershey saw a sharp increase in 2020, and while I don't know if they had the highest attendance from any non-theme park in the US in 2021, I think we can assume they did significantly better than some of their competitors. Hershey Park has been packed ever since the addition of Candymonium, and according to the charts monitoring wait times on coasters, it seems 2022 is more crowded than ever before at Hershey Park. Hershey Park is definitely aware that the 2020 edition has been a massive success, and with all the extra money they've made, they'll no doubt want to pour some back into the park with a brand new coaster. But how does this all tie into Hershey Park overtaking Cedar Point? With Hershey Park growing like never before, it seems they are looking to polish up the park, as we're seeing with Jolly Rancher Remix and Wildcat. It also seems like a new coaster could be coming to Truckletown, and I think it'll be an RMC Hyper Hybrid. If Hershey Park does that, then I think 2025 or 2026, they can open a B&M Dive. That'll give them a lineup about equal to Cedar Point's current lineup and will make them one of the best parks in the country. But that doesn't include the new coaster Cedar Point will definitely open in that time period. With the success Hershey Park has been having, I don't think it's too far-fetched to say that by 2030, Hershey Park could destroy Cedar Point's title of #1 and take it for themselves. It's crazy to think so far in advance, but maybe Hershey Park will open a B&M Giga in 2029, followed by an Intamin Blitz 2 years later. Hershey Park is a park that caters to thrill seekers as well as families, and that's why I think in the next 10 years they will definitely destroy Cedar Point when it comes to attendance. Hershey Park is already not far behind, and who knows, maybe them having the highest attendance in 2020 is something that continues to 2021. I love Hershey Park, and it's one of my favorite parks to visit. Hershey Park's future looks brighter than ever, and that just excites me. If you want updates on Hershey Park all the time, you'll want to check out Hershey Park Enthusiast. He is one of my favorite coaster channels, and who knows, maybe we can do a collab one day.